it comes down to like how you use Yainer Diaz because, and I know that this has been an ongoing conversation all year. I know that you're not going to catch him. We've conceded this. I know you're not going to play him at first base, and he doesn't have another position, right? Like you're not going to throw him out there in left field. And again, the whole Yordan Alvarez is going to be a DH most of the time. It puts you in this difficult position, especially if you don't have a Michael Brantley back. But he's one of your best offensive players. Like if you went offensive importance, need them in the lineup. Yainer Diaz is he top 5?
Yeah.
Like Yordan's definitely in there. Jose Altuve's definitely in there. Kyle Tucker's definitely in there. Alex Bregman is in there. Although you could have an argument about Yainer Diaz versus Alex Bregman. Who's the next guy? For me, it's Yainer Diaz. You might say Michael Brantley, but Michael Brantley's not available right now.
Small sample size too.
Small sample size. Like I would have Yainer ahead of Brantley. I would have Yainer ahead of Chaz. Quite frankly, like Yainer Diaz to me is the 5th most important offensive weapon on this team, and he's like a 60% player. Like I want to see that kind of get fixed over the next 9 games. I don't really think that it will, but if you're lucky enough to get to the postseason, Michael Brantley doesn't come back. Yordan Alvarez is playing left field when Fromber's pitching, when Verlander's pitching, when Javier's pitching. Why? Because it opens up the DH spot because Yainer's not catching. Like, once you get to the postseason, Yordan has to be a primary left fielder because Yainer needs to be in the lineup.
Yeah, I look at it and I say it comes down to, for that decision in the top 5 or so, Yainer is right there with Chaz. The biggest thing for me is Yainer has the ability to go yard at any time and completely change a game. It's not anything to take anything away from Chaz and what he's been all season long. But that boom power that he brings, and it's just so natural, and it just seems so effortless, the power that he brings to the table, that it's something that this lineup seems to need, because it never seems to be that they're all on the same page at the same time, especially from power numbers, when you get Tuck and Yordan and Altuve and Bregman all clicking at the same time. They've all been clicking at times, but I think having Yainer in there gives you an extra thumper that I think this lineup seems to need. So I'm with you. I think he's top 5, top 6, but I think he's a guy that has to be in this lineup for this offense to click on all cylinders.
He's your second best power guy.
Yeah,
he's the second best power guy on this team. He hits home runs at a higher rate than Kyle Tucker. I think he actually hits home runs at a higher rate than Yordan right now. I haven't looked in a while, but Yordan hasn't homered recently. Yainer has. I think Yainer's jumped him. If he didn't jump him, it's very, very close. But Yainer Diaz has the second most power on this team. He doesn't have more power than Yordan, even if the numbers say that he does. Yordan's a more powerful hitter. Yainer's second. Yainer has more power than a 30 home run hitting Kyle Tucker. He's got more power than Chas McCormick. He's got more power than Alex Bregman. He's got more power than an aging Jose Abreu. Yainer Diaz is your second best slugger, and he plays 60% of the time. This isn't a bash Dusty Baker thing. We do enough of that.
Yeah.
Like regular season, it's difficult to do. Like final 9 games, I know you're in a race, it's difficult to do. But you get to a spot where it's do or die. You get to a spot where it's the playoffs. Yordan, if Michael Brantley's not healthy, and even if Michael Brantley's healthy, this still might be the case, Yordan's going to have to play left field because Yainer needs to be the DH, and we all know that Maldy's catching Fromber, JV, and Javier. So, you just have to get his bat in there because he's so good. And that's the question I have. Whenever it is high stakes, when it's do or die, when it's postseason, will Dusty Baker play Yordan in left and Yainer as the designated hitter when Maldonado's catching?
I think he should, because I think the other thing is, and it's something that you posed a long time ago when we were basically not counting on Michael Brantley at all. Would you be cool with Michael Brantley being your pinch hitter off the bench and being a guy that comes in situationally when you need a stick? And now it seems like that might be the only logical spot for him if indeed he's healthy enough to play. But because you have a very good replacement, a reliable guy that you can replace him in the lineup with, and that you can get in the lineup to do the things he's been doing all year, you put Yainer in the lineup and you get your we've said, look, this team, if it's going to win and go far in the playoffs, the offense is probably going to have to carry him. If that's the case, you got to load up offensively. If he's not catching, he's in the lineup at DH or somewhere, and we know that Dusty's not going to sit Abreu down in the playoffs. So then he has to be the DH, and you're right. Yordan, as much as he's fragile and he can get caught on skates, like he did a few weeks ago and scare the hell out of everyone, Yordan's got to be in left. Yainer's got to be a DH, and this team has to have the best chance to win offensively top to bottom. Hitters need to be in the lineup, and you got to find a spot for this guy, and if Dusty's not going to do that, well, then that's on Dusty, and that could be something that could be, against Dusty at the end of the season.
Pudge, whenever he was first coming up, was actually a pretty light-hitting catcher, at least from a power perspective. He had pretty good contact skills, but did not hit for much power. Yainer Diaz is going to flirt with 25 home runs in his rookie year and not that many at-bats. He could have easily had 500 at-bats, and he's flirting with 35 home runs. Pudge didn't dream of that until, he was year 7, year 8, and in the late 90s when some things were happening around Major League Baseball. Like Pudge went from a very light hitting catcher, like good average guy, good contact guy, but never hit for any pop. And then all of a sudden he was hitting for tons of pop in the late 90s, pretty deep into his career. Yainer Diaz has more natural raw power than Pudge, quite frankly, ever did. And I know Pudge had some years where he hit tons of home runs. I think you're catching what I'm saying. And also Pudge was more defensive minded than offensive minded early in his career. Now it kind of changed, but Pudge was more defense than offense. And I'm not knocking Yainer's defensive skills, but there was questions even at the start of this season in spring training if Yainer's like defensively good enough to catch. I think he's evolved where he's clearly good enough defensively to catch, but that's not what he's hanging his hat on. No. He's hanging his hat on his offense. So I don't like the Pudge comp, quite frankly. I don't really have a good comp for Yainer.
Who are
because
the best hitting catchers you've seen early in their career? Bench, Piazza?
I mean, I'm not going to compare them to the two best offensive catchers of all time.
Are those the two best of all time?
Probably, offensively.
Okay.
Yeah, like I was going to say Salvador Perez, but Salvador Perez took a while to hit for some power. Like if you want to go a little bit throwback, like Javi Lopez, Yainer's weird, man, because like nowadays most of these catchers are defensive-minded, defensive first. Managers need defense behind the dish, and you don't have many good hitting catchers. Like Adley Rutschman's one of them. But I can't really think of a good comp for Yainer. But he's more offensive first than he is defensive first. Sure. Defense is certainly evolving. I don't love the Pudge comp. Quite honestly, I struggle with a comp.
From St. Louis,
Molina.
Yeah,
I mean he was defensive first too.
He wasn't a bad hitter.
No, he wasn't bad, but his calling card was his defense. Yeah. He was like one of the better defensive catchers of our generation.
I think the best of all time, I think Gary Carter in that mix because he had a lot of offense. He was a really good hitter as well as being a good, a signal caller and behind the dish. But there just aren't that many that have that perfect storm of the bat for average, for power, and to be an above average catcher. And that's why I don't want to pigeonhole him and put him up against anybody right now. You just got to be happy as hell that he's on your squad and that, they discovered him and got him in a position where he can show what he can do, and now he's part of your future.
Someone said Joe Mauer. Mauer never had tons of pop like Yainer does. And Joe Mauer was like a little more selective. He would see more pitches. He would draw some walks. And he was also like led the league in batting average. Yainer's a good contact hitter. I don't think he's ever going to threaten for a batting championship, maybe a home run championship. So Mauer, offensive-minded first, good defender, really good athlete. Eventually moved to first base, by the way. But I don't love that comp either. Somebody said Real Muto. That's not a bad one. Because Real Muto is like good. Real Muto is probably better defensively, but he's like an athletic catcher where he can run a little bit. And I think Yainer is kind of slept on with his athleticism. I think he's much faster than people think.
Posey's a better hitter, right? For average?
Yeah, he's more contact than power.
Yeah, he doesn't have pop.
No, he's more contact than power. Someone said best catcher hitter is Bryce Harper. Yeah, but he didn't catch since junior college.